Okay, everybody, it's our first time at this location, and we're beginning something a little new. We don't know how the food's going to work out, and just to let you know, the prices, I put those up on the screen a minute ago. I can find it again. The sound system, of course, I can't control the volume from here, so try to hold the mic in the right place. I've got both mics on. I'll turn that one off. We had the hot breakfast, and for every 12 people, it's $80, and they gave us 3 servings. 3 8s are 24. That's $240 for 24 people. So it tells you that's $10, and that's just the beginning, because there's juice, there's coffee. We're going to be over $300. So just to tell you, the prices are going to have to go up for us to keep doing it, and that's just if we don't come back and go back there 3 times and keep filling the plate, okay? So there are other things we can have, but it depends on how much you want to pay every month. Yes?
If you order off the menu, you'll still have to pay for it.
You have to pay for what?
If you order off the menu, you'll still have to pay for a meeting.
Yeah. I mean, the meetings, we got to pay for the room if we're doing other things. So if we order this way, there's no charge for the room. So we're trying to figure out the most convenient way to do it at the least price.
How much is it?
The room is, I think, $100, and it depends on how many hours you want. And we're going to try to do from 8 to 12. So I think, and the gal who set us up is not here today, so I don't know if we just rented the room without food. But the disadvantage of ordering off the menu is we got waitresses coming in and out during the meeting. So this way the food's out at 8:30 and you eat by 9, and we start around 9 o'clock. So I have a few things to go over. We've got a few speakers who will talk for a little bit about Thomas Costanzo's trial. And those of you that attended the trial, there weren't too many of us, and I attended all but one day. And I wish I hadn't missed that day. But I'm going to try to get the transcripts. I've got some information on the transcripts today. I did get a donation, which I didn't expect, $2,300 toward transcript costs. And one person put that into the Bitcoin account. So whoever it was, thank you. Those, and any funds that are left over will be for Thomas, whatever the day is that he's out of his situation and back with us. So
What was the result?
the result of the trial, guilty on all counts, but I'll go over that.
Guilty.
5 counts. Now there were originally 8 counts, and I'll give you a little info on this. Let's get this off the screen here. I don't need to see that any longer. We'll close it. If we go to, let's see if this will open up. And it doesn't want to open. There it is, right there. I'm going to show you, no, I don't want to do that one. We will find it in the notes here. I'll show you some things that you can look up online at home. Let's see, right here. And there it is. It's interesting how this thing doesn't act right with the 2 screens. I do 2 screens at home, but here this TV set acts differently. So I'm going to drag this. Come on. There we go. That's not the right one. It's this one. It's funny. Puts it off in the corner where I can't see it. Strange. All right. Close them all and see if it'll let me open it another way. Close tabs. There we go. There we are, right there. Okay, we're getting closer. The website, courtcasedocs.com. If you go to that site, I've got a number of court cases up there that I've put up over the years. You can see all kinds of John Stewart's case, if you remember that way back when. Lots of cases. Some of them are complete, some of them aren't. This is the one at the top right here, Thomas Costanzo. We open it up. All the documents that are on Pacer that have been there since the beginning, I've downloaded and paid for 10 cents a page and posted them up here. So you can go through here and read all the documents. I also put up a section for legal reference material. If you look at the indictment, want to know what Dr. Steinmetz and Thomas were indicted with at the beginning. All 8 counts are listed in the first superseding indictment. And if you slide down, you can find that in here. Then we've got court transcripts for every time they appeared in court for anything. I bought all the transcripts to date except for the trial. The trial now, the price is lower. So I'll go over that because it wasn't as many days as they planned. Some of the things I'd recommend you read here, but the articles that I put on Freedom's Phoenix are under here. And the most recent one is here. The one before that is below it. And this is what I suggested you read, and it gives you the document numbers to refer to. So number 18 is the indictment, 74 is an order, but all those things kind of lay the groundwork of where we are. The jury instructions were quite interesting to listen to the jury instructions, and they are listed right on the website. They posted them. So you can go read the instructions that were given to the jury. The jury had some interesting choices. The question is, Arizona Bitcoin trial, right? Was it about Bitcoin or something else? I think the government would have liked it to have been about Bitcoin, but I don't think it ended up the way they wanted it. They wanted Thomas to be required to file CTR, the customer or the currency transaction report, suspicious activity report, all these reports that banks are required to file. And the jury said, he's not, yes. Well, do you know how to get up and turn it on?
I don't know.
I can't be there and here. So, it's on, I'll do it, turn the volume a little. Thank you. So, it changes. Anyway, so what the jury was given 2 choices on every count but one. Now, the counts were related to transactions. First transaction was not even included. First transaction was the undercover agent from the IRS, who's pretended to be an import-export guy, Russian national, actually. Gee, I think that's the Russian that they're looking for Trump. Anyway, the point is, he was believable as an import-export guy, owned a company, and what he didn't tell Thomas anything about anything else other than import-export, and he wanted to get some Bitcoin. And so they sold him $2,000 worth of Bitcoin, no big deal. There's no count on that one. The next one, he told them it was from heroin sales. So Thomas said, okay, and sold them the Bitcoin. So the next one, and the next one, and the next one. I'm going to turn that. Not working so hard. There you go. Okay, turn it back. That going to work? Okay, you can shut that volume up a little bit. You can bring the volume up a little bit, and we'll be fine. And you can adjust the volume on the backside on the individual mic. Okay, so I'll see if I can find the document on the website. It will explain a lot right here. And this will get us to the end. They posted some documents recently, and right here, 188, and 188 tells us the verdict form. Here's count 1, $3,000 Bitcoin transaction, and they found him guilty of money laundering, which was, did he knowingly do these things? And we'll read that in a second. Count 2 had 2 possibilities. Notice, the defendant intended to avoid a transaction reporting requirement. That was the only question the jury asked. Interesting question. We all came back into the courtroom, and the question was that the jury asked was he required to do this? Was there any requirement for him to fulfill CTR, which is the currency transaction report, SAR, which is the suspicious activity report, and KYC, know your customer, all the things that banks have to do? Was he required to do those things? The judge looked at the lawyers and said, I say the answer is no. What do you say? And they said, no, Your Honor. He was not required. They did not check that box. Had they checked that box that says that anybody who does a Bitcoin transaction is required to do those documents. So what'd they say? Thomas didn't have to do any paperwork. He won on paperwork. No paperwork required. If he kept his mouth shut, he wouldn't have lost on the second one. The second one was the one right here. Defendant intended to conceal or disguise the nature, location, source, ownership, or control of property believed to be the proceeds of specified unlawful activity. Whether your viewpoint is that all drugs should be okay and you should do what you want, the law is, whether we like it or not right now, that it's a crime. And he knowingly did this, and by his own statements that he made, and they played those recordings. See, he was admitting every time he knew what they were doing, and it was okay with him. That's what did him in. And all the rest of the counts, 2, 3, 4, and 5, had those two choices, and the jury did not check number 1 on any of them and checked number 2 on all the rest. So he was found guilty of money laundering only. Had nothing to do with reporting requirements. Even the one for $107,000, they tell you, no reporting requirement. So Bitcoin wins. You can trade Bitcoin all day long, and there's no reporting requirement. Just don't do it for unlawful activity. And if you don't know about it, and the agents made it real plain, and that's what their whole point was, to entrap him, and that's the defense. But the question is, was he entrapped? That's going to be interesting to see what happens. I don't know what the status, and I don't know, do you know any more about it, Ernie? So we don't know whether there'll be an appeal or what the deal is. There's so many days after the decision. It may be after the guilty verdict, or it may be after the sentencing. They have so many days to put their notice of appeal in, and we'll have to see what they do on that. Now, I did get to something from Miss Powers. Find this right here. Okay. I have an email from the lady, the court reporter, and she says that currently, with the number of days, that for $3,600, not $6,000, we can have everything. And I want to have the jury voir dire, because that is very telling, to go through and see what the judge is asking these jurors to try to get rid of them, okay? And they went through and they did it by number. Every juror had a number. There were 67, and they went through all 67, and it took all day, the first day, to ask the questions and determine who was going to be in and who was out. And then after the judge got done, then the lawyers got their shot, and then they got together, the jurors all left, the potential jurors left the room, and they all decided, called everybody back in and called out the juror numbers, and they got 15 jurors, and those 15 are seated, and there are 3 alternates. They want 12 jurors, right? 3 are extras, so if somebody's sick or something happens, they've got somebody to replace them, but don't have to do the trial over again. And they didn't know who they were. So the 3 alternates didn't know until just before they're going into the jury room. They named those 3 to pull them out, and the 12 went in. The other 3 still had to be available. Something happens during deliberations, they still need to replace somebody. But it didn't take that long, because after they went out, within 2 hours, 2.5 hours, they were done that day. And they'd already come back in with this guilty verdict. The other thing that was interesting was after the guilty verdict, let's see, minimize that. This one here, okay. Let's see, there's another document, I'll find that. If I can get the mouse to work over here. I bought a cable yesterday that's 35 feet long, so this could be out where I could see this. And it was bad from the store. I knew that at 9 o'clock last night after they closed, so we're stuck with a 6-foot cable. But anyway, if I go back over here, and go to the bottom. Return to case. And go clear down here. The next document is the supplemental jury verdict. This is interesting. Thomas had $600 and some in cash, okay, and sorted precious metals that were in his residence and some that were on his person. Were those things to be forfeited? And they said no on all three. The only thing they said was to be forfeited was essentially $107,000 worth of Bitcoin. Why? Well, that was involved in that last transaction. The government used government money, what a laugh, and paid him cash, and then they arrested him after he transferred the Bitcoin. So now he's got somebody else's Bitcoin that he was supposed to give the cash to. So whose Bitcoin is it? Well, as the judge said, it's not for the jury to worry about. If somebody else has a claim on it, they can make their claim. We'll see what happens with that. I'm sure that it's probably Dr. Steinmetz or somebody that provided at least a good portion of that will have a claim to get it back. But that's the only thing they said was forfeited. So they left him with his $600 and his precious metals, because there's no tie to any crime with that, even though the government tried to show that he showed the coins to people, tell them about precious metals, that was part of his sales pitch, whatever. The jury didn't buy it. So I was pleased. What?
There were no sound recordings made?
Unless you want to go to jail, you don't do that.
Well, when I
No.
went to Mark and Rose's federal trial
Okay.
in 2005, the court recorded it all on sound.
Yeah.
I got a recording from the court.
Court recorded. They don't do it here. There was no recording permitted in that courtroom. So you don't want to get caught doing that. That's a long story. I can tell you about Oklahoma, but I'd rather not. It's not a pleasant experience to have the judge mad at you for recording.
But I say the federal court themselves recorded it.
Yes.
Did they record it in audio in the courtroom?
They said no. It's only the court reporter. That's it. So sometimes they videotape them for some reason. Sometimes they do audio. But I asked specifically about it, and they said no. They would not record this. It was all the court reporter. Now the court reporter might record it to verify things. I don't know, but we're told there is no recording available. And I asked the guy when I was going to order the first transcripts, is there any recording? He said there's no recording. It'll all be by the transcripts. So the official transcripts is what we have. Now we have, yeah, official, right? So the Shiny Badge Group, yes. I would like to know what the total cost of the whole operation was. My guess is $300,000 to pick a guy up who makes $20,000 to $30,000 a year. Yeah, I mean, I think the whole point was they were trying to make a point, and they wanted box one checked on all these, and they didn't get it. All they got was because he opened his mouth, knew it was drug money, and took it and traded for Bitcoin. That's what got him. If he hadn't done that, if he'd walked away on that, he wouldn't have been there. But entrapment, who knows? Well, that's what the defense is. So, yes. Public defender. And I thought she did an outstanding job with what she had to work with. Some of the read those documents that were filed. It's good stuff. There was a lot of good arguments. There was no defense put on. That's the reason it ended when it did. They had a choice to put Thomas on the stand or not. What's the only fact witness the defense had? Thomas. He is the only one present. So he would have been the fact witness. You put him on the stand, now he gets to be cross-examined. And they did not want him cross-examined. They chose not to put him on the stand. And then all the other witnesses, Tom's one of them here, and Michael, they had the two of you ready to come and testify if called. And when there was no defense, there was no need. Now, one of you want to come up and say what your views of everything was, and we'll carry this meeting on a little bit. You want to come first? And
What was the name of the public defender, please?
Widener, Miss Widener, Weidner. If you read the documents, her address and everything.
I need, well, I want to put this up so people can see this. Let's see. Thomas. This is Thomas Costanzo's hard copy mail information if you want to write him a letter. This is the address if you want to go down there, and phone number to Florence to visit him in the prison, and there's a phone number so you can ascertain when you can go. You cannot wear short pants. This is if you want to send him some money for his little account there where he gets this and that in prison. You can send it through Western Union. You can talk to me afterwards, and I'll tell you the specific, the little details of how you can contact or help him. Tom is a friend of mine, and I think he's a good human being. Entrapment. The jury instructions covered entrapment. What that was, that's a setup by undercover agents. And once you have a defense of entrapment, the government is required to, they have to prove, one, that the defendant was predisposed to commit the crime, and number two, that they did not induce the defendant. Now that's a real question here, and it's for the jury to decide. To summarize, and in the jury instructions, here's what they call inducement, creating a risk that an otherwise innocent person is going to do this, and inducement and predispose. There's various jury has to consider, but you have to be predisposed. Basically, an entrapment, to summarize it, and I used to be a prosecuting attorney. With entrapment, what you have is you have to have a little mouse trap with cheese on it for a mouse. That's okay to put that trap there for the defendant. But what you can't do is push the mouse or induce the mouse with any additional trickery. You can put the best smelling cheese there that you can dream up, but you got to let the mouse go to the trap himself. And they really did. Now, they had a pretty good system to nail Thomas, and I'll tell you what it was. The government undercover agent said, gee, do you want to do a deal? I got so much money to do a Bitcoin deal. And they would talk about that for a while. And then all of a sudden, the government agent would blurt out, it's dope money, it's drug money, it's heroin money. So they got Thomas to take the bait that he wants to do the transaction. Then they say, oh yeah, but they're essentially saying, yeah, but now you got to know it's dope money. So Thomas, stupidly, his defense, he would always say, he would then say, well, I don't want to know your personal business, after they would say it was heroin money or something. Or he would say, I don't say that again. So he would say stuff like that, sort of thinking that he was protecting himself. But no, once they tell you, once you know, you know. Does everybody understand that? Does everybody understand that? So if somebody comes up to you and offers you to commit so they got him there, and he wanted to go ahead. What can we learn here about entrapment? One is that I don't want to know, or don't tell me that, does not erase your knowledge and therefore your complicity in the proposed crime. The other thing that I think is very important is that anytime someone comes up to you and says, hey, do you want to participate in a crime that you don't know very well, they're either an undercover agent or they could be a person who wants to blackmail you. So it's good business when you're presented with doing something wrong, just to say, get out of here, or, I don't want to do that, because you're likely to get hurt. The ways the government can set you up, because they do this all the time, okay? One is a traffic stop, and then they bait you so that you resist arrest. You understand that? That's one way. A very common way is through tax fraud. You do something with another person that's fraudulent. I mean, my advice is always pay your taxes very carefully so they don't screw you. Sex, hookers, they set you up with hookers. John Stockwell, CIA a station chief said that was the first thing we did when we went into a country. We went to the big officials and set them up with hookers so we could record all that and we could blackmail. They tried that with Ralph Nader, hookers. Illegal drugs, we know that. Guns, that's an important thing. Ruby Ridge, there's bet a lot of people know about Ruby Ridge. That was a setup with a sawed-off shotgun. And it was all because so the government is looking for an excuse to take people out on various issues. One is gun nuts. That was Ruby Ridge. So if you're a gun nut and you're outspoken and you get in their face enough, they'll try and set you up. Another important thing I thought out of Thomas's trial, reading through some of the documents, was that if you are characterized as to a regular citizen as anti-government, they're prejudiced against you. They don't care if it's anti-government because the government's murdering somebody or you claim they are, but a regular citizen who's just a regular TV watching idiot, they are prejudiced against you if you are characterized as a really tough situation. Then the reasons the government want to set you up. One, you oppose their yes. The traffic stop works where you get into a pissing contest with the officer, and then finally you're resisting arrest, right? Yeah. So I mean, a lot of people. So that's my the way I live. If the cops do something to me, I get down on my knees and I say, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. What should I do? Because they can take you out. That's the way I do it. If somebody else wants to do it different, that's fine.
No, in front of everybody, I lay on the hood of the car, put my hands behind me, call supervisor or something, man.
Yeah. So in World War I, draft resistors were not pursued and arrested until they did one of two things. One, they became vocal and went public with the resistance, or two, they threatened violence. So the government will let you go under certain situations. This cryptocurrency is very important, and Ernie knows a lot more about this and other people do than I do. But if you read Freedom's Phoenix, you'll find that there is a worldwide, a huge battle of central banks and governments against cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies, if established, will displace the fiat money system in the United States, the Federal Reserve. They will choke off the lifeblood of our federal government, which does a lot of bad things. I know for a fact that Thomas's motivation was that he felt that if he got cryptocurrency established, it would choke off the lifeblood of our federal government that is running around the world committing a lot of crimes and also committing crimes against citizens in this country. Respect. So that's this battle. I don't understand all of it, but it's a major battle, and it's covered in Freedom's Phoenix all the time in detail. If you are small, they will usually leave you alone as a coop. That's why a lot of us haven't been hassled. But if you get too big, they'll take you out, and witness what happened to Alex Jones recently. And of course, John Kennedy, Martin Luther King, they'll get shot if necessary. Thomas was a tiny little guy, but if you think about it, they've been taking out the tiny little guys. The little cryptocurrency facilitators, they can't present theoretically a very good defense, whereas Dr. Steinmetz had the money to present a defense. Now, so the theory is if you run around the country taking out the little tiny guys like Thomas, you'll scare some of the big guys. Unfortunately for the government, as Terry said, this time the government failed in its attempt to get the jury to agree that facilitating cryptocurrency transaction is a crime. So I put down here, there's a world battle raging, central banks and governments versus cryptocurrency. This is the last sheet, and I'll shut up. Some of you who know me know that I'm stuck on this stuff, but the government tricks. One is a provocation. That was Fort Sumter, the Lusitania. Entrapment. That was Pearl Harbor, and anybody who hasn't done Pearl Harbor investigation, read Day of Deceit by Stinnett. But that was an entrapment. We entrapped the Japanese. Ruby Ridge, blackmail, hookers, all that sort of stuff. False flags. We know about false flags. 9/11, Gulf of Tonkin, the Liberty ship. And then you have the direct lies and propaganda, blah, blah, blah. I won't go into that. Gulf War I, into the incubators in Gulf War I, the weapons of mass destruction in World War II, the Afghan war with the bin Laden tape and all that baloney. I'm getting close to the end. I have some resources here that talk about this. If you want to look at them, you can look at them. Two guys on Freedom's Phoenix that are really smart is a Stephen Lendman and a guy named Jacob Hornberger. They're really, really very competent. And I want to end with this, which I feel is very important. You know, Jesus Christ, who said he got this prayer from his Father in heaven, was the Lord's Prayer, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Our federal government leads us into temptation and delivers us into evil.
I'll leave it like that. Okay. I'd like to thank Terry and Mike. Both did a really good job on covering the case and everything they've been doing to help Morpheus. As I said, I was called on the witness list to be basically a character witness. I did have some interaction. I bought some bitcoins. I was his landlord. He paid me in Bitcoin a couple times. So that's the reason I was on the witness list. Unfortunately, they didn't call me, and because I was on the witness list, I wasn't able to actually go to the majority of the trial, which was kind of upsetting to me. I went to the first day in the jury deliberation, or when they were picking the jury, and then I got kicked out after that, and then I came back the last day when they said I could come back, and I got to hear about an hour of the closing arguments from the prosecution, and then I got to hear the defense, which I was very surprised that the prosecution went for 4.5 days, and the defense basically went for like 30 minutes or an hour or something like that. And I thought there was probably a lot more that she could have went into, but I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand all the all that kind of stuff. But it just seemed like, specifically with regards to the intent, like Mike said, is I don't think they really had the ability to show that he had intent, because he wasn't in the drug trafficking business. What motivation did he have to launder money? And I don't see that he had a motivation, and therefore I don't see that he had an intent. He may have done it indiscriminately because of whatever reason, but I don't think his intent was to go out there and launder money. But anyway, I've been friends with Thomas for a long time, about 10 years. I've known him really well. We made a lot of signs together during the Ron Paul Revolution and all that, and so I got to know him really well. We, traveled around doing billboards and stuff like that. And so I got to know him pretty well. He was living in my apartment at this time, and the way I found out was, like, my wife got a call from one of our tenants saying that there was a SWAT team at our apartment complex. They had an MRAP there, and just like 20-something agents running around, and they wanted to get into the unit 202. And so I told her, don't even go, just, let them bust the door down. Don't even go over there. But she went, and she talked to them, and immediately, they're trying to interrogate her, all of a sudden. And I told her don't even go there because, you know, they're going to want to ask you all kinds of questions and, you know, lure you into some kind of, you know, deal. And they wanted, you know, lease agreements, and they want to know how he paid his rent, and, you know, started asking all these questions. And I had a bumper sticker on the back of my car from Key West that said something like sovereignty, a state of mind kind of thing. It's a whole other story, but, you know, he looked at that and immediately like, oh, you're one of those, you know, anti-government sovereign citizen kind of thing. So they're interrogating my wife. She knew nothing about this bumper sticker, you know. But it says sovereignty, a state of mind. It's from the Conch Republic, you know, of Key West. You know, when we went to Key West, that's a whole other story about how they were protesting this. They decided they're going to secede from the United States. It was kind of a joke, but it was to protest this checkpoint. Anyway, so she was actually on the witness list too because of her interaction with these agents, you know. But she was on the prosecution side. They were going to call her for the prosecution, and I was supposed to be on the defense. So that was a little unnerving. But anyway, so I think Mike and Terry did a pretty good job covering, you know, the case, and so there's a couple interesting things I saw in the original witness, or in the original complaint. This is kind of interesting. You know, so they arrested him the day before without a charge. The next day they got a search warrant and searched the apartment. They tore the whole apartment apart. Later that night, like at 10:30 at night, I get a call from a tenant, you know, that the window was busted out and that, you know, there's someone in the apartment and noise, and, you know, so I had to go over there late at night to board the window up because they just left the apartment in shambles. The AC was turned on to like 52 degrees. Ran his, you know, electric, you know, charge card out of money. There's a big hole in the ceiling, you know. Okay. Is that better? Better? Slow down. Okay. Okay. Anyway, so there was a hole. They left a hole in the ceiling, you know, or the crawl space to get into the attic, and they left the air conditioning on and just left the place in a mess. So I had to deal with that. I had to move all of his stuff from his apartment, store it all. It's, you know, all still in storage. They never paid anything. No. They never offered to pay anything, never offered to compensate anything. You know, that's the kind of people we're dealing with. So just on the basic moral grounds, you know, these are not moral people. I mean, who would do that to someone else, you know, without even offering to compensate? So there are actually real victims in this case. You know, I'm one of them, and Thomas is the other. But the interesting thing in the original, question? There was a sheriff SWAT team, yeah. There was a big MRAP building. It was sheriff, yeah. Yeah. So anyway, in the complaint, it actually said the reason they charged him. The first thing they charged him with was box of ammo that was stored in his closet that was affecting interstate commerce. So, you know, if you understand jurisdiction, they have to, you know, establish jurisdiction. Originally, you know, they find some way to get through jurisdiction. Originally, it was like post office, you know, laws. Well, you send a mail, so therefore we have jurisdiction over you. Well, now everything is under Commerce Clause. They have to show somehow it was related to interstate commerce. That's where their authority comes. They have authority to regulate interstate commerce. They don't. So in the original complaint, it said they found a box of ammo affecting interstate commerce. So the box of ammo sitting in his closet somehow was affecting interstate commerce. And that gave them jurisdiction to hold him in jail. So that's how insane, you know, these people have become. You know, I mean, a box of ammo. Well, later it also says that this was the next day, or they actually followed up on that and said it was Winchester ammo, which is not manufactured in the state of Arizona. Therefore, because it was manufactured in another state, at some point it crossed the line, and therefore gives them jurisdiction to hold him in jail because he has that sitting in his closet. So that's how insane this is, what we're dealing with. And, you know, they don't really care about moral principle or moral law. They'll stretch anything, and somehow they don't get challenged. I don't know why none of this stuff was even challenged. Maybe it will be on appeal. I don't know. Maybe, you know, maybe the lawyer, you know, his defense attorney has something up her sleeve or something. She's working on some big, you know, plot that she's going to get him out. I don't know. But it seems, you know, pretty weak at this point. You know, and the funny thing is, the original charge they charged him with later was dropped because they miscalculated. They can only it's only a felony from a federal standpoint if it's more than a year, if the sentence is more than a year. But his was actually exactly 1 year. So that's why sometimes you hear him say a year and a day, because that makes it a federal felony. And now they have jurisdiction. So because it was only a year sentence, they had to drop it and throw it out. So the original reason and the probable cause, they had to, you know, hold him, and eventually was thrown out. So anyway, you know, I've done some research. I'm not a lawyer, legal expert, or anything like that, but I really, you know, have a concern about how do we get to this point, you know, where we're locking people up who've never harmed anybody. You know, Morpheus, you know, as Mike said, he's a good person. We all know he's a good person. Where's the injured party? Who was harmed by what he did? And how do we get to this point in our society and our culture that we're putting people in cages who haven't harmed anybody? And so I try to do a lot of research on that. Everybody's kind of heard the saying, you know, no victim, no crime, right? Everybody's heard that, I'm sure. And what does that mean? And does it have any effect or meaning in law? You know, how can they get away with just throwing anyone in jail when there's no injured party? And I did a lot of research on that, and I found tons of Supreme Court cases on all the requirements for standing. And there's very clear and very concise when they talk about standing. That's where they get their jurisdiction to oversee a case. Is based on it's called the Cases and Controversies Clause. It has to be a case or a controversy, which has been defined as something in the common law realm. And there has to be an injured party, and not only does there have to be an injured party, but it has to be a real injury. It can't be a hypothetical. It's very clear. It cannot be hypothetical. In this case, there was no real drugs. Nowhere in there did they even talk about any real drugs, except for one case that wasn't even part of the trial, really, where he bought some ecstasy or something like that from some high school kid. But but none of the heroin or the cocaine even existed. So how could anybody be harmed by something that doesn't exist? It's a complete fabrication. And so the entire crime was fabricated, and they charged him, and they, you know, created this essentially fictional character that they then presented to the jury, and the jury got this nice, you know, clean, you know, view of this fictional character based on a fictional crime, and convicted, you know, but now he's, you know, actually in a real jail. Serving a real, right? It is a thought crime, yeah. But you know, it's very clear, that there has to be an injury. But what I found out was that it really only applies to civil cases. So all these Supreme Court cases, or spell out the standing rule, apparently only apply to civil cases. In other words, if you're going to sue somebody, then you have all your rights intact. But if the government's going to come after you, that's when you don't have any rights. For some reason, somehow that happened, and they split it into criminal versus civil, and I think that's pretty much goes back, you know, several hundred years. Or if it's civil, well now, you know, there are limitations on constitutional power, authority. If it's criminal, well, we're the government, now we can do whatever we want. We always have standing. So no, they don't even challenge the standing anymore at all in these criminal cases. Does he? Okay. Is it a criminal case? Right. 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 So this kind of went back into the history of, starts in common law, really. There's two types of law: common law, which originates from England, English common law, and civil law, which originates from Rome and Greece. The difference between the two, common law is really based on the whole. This is where we get the concept of a jury trial, due process, an injured party. There's two parties in a common law court. Common law court was for people who have, settling disputes between individuals. And so basically, but the civil law is based on the legislation. So the legislature creates the law, establishes the law, and then the people are ruled through legislation. But so the real question is how do we get from, originally we had common law even before the Constitution was established in the colonies. And somehow that once the Constitution was established, they created this federal jurisdiction, which now is based on civil law, where they write these statutes, and now they can create a statute that means anything, that can basically hold people in jail based on these crimes where there's no victim, and it's just anything. And so how did it, come to that being? And just on a side note, I went on a trip about 2 years ago. I went to London, and I wanted to see the Temple Church. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that. It was built in the 1200s, and this was the headquarters of the Knights Templar. And so I thought that'd be a cool thing to see. And I went there, and they had a whole expose, and they remodeled it, and it was as a museum. And they were talking about the effect that the Knights Templar had on the common law. And they actually called the church is called the Cradle of Common Law, where this common law was developed and was very much, where the Knights Templar had the influence in developing this common law over, a century, pretty much, almost a century, and how they were integral in getting the Magna Carta signed by, the king. And so that's kind of the history of how far back this goes, the common law, and how we now somehow transition. We're founded based on that, and now we've sort of meandered off into this civil law kind of fictional world, a world of fiction, where crimes don't really have injured parties. So basically, some of the standing requirements are, basically these are the requirements. Is there has to be an injury in fact. The plaintiff must have suffered an imminent or suffered an injury, an invasion of legal prosecution interest that is concrete and particularized. It can't just be some fictional made-up thing. Actual or imminent, that is neither conjectural or hypothetical. This is straight out of Wikipedia. The injury can be either economic or non-economic or both. So it can't be hypothetical. Like in Thomas's case, it's hypothetical. Hypothetically, he could have, traded with some drugs, and, let's say maybe he did buy some drugs or sell some drugs, and maybe someone was injured. It's possible that, the drug business can lead to injury. You could sell someone some bad drugs, and now you're responsible for the injury that you caused. So there's a possibility there. But in his case, it's completely hypothetical. There weren't even any drugs, so we can't even get into the aspect of whether the drugs are dangerous and actually harmed anybody. Causation is the other one. Is they have to show a connection. That's what they call the cause of action. You have to show a direct correlation between the actions that Thomas took and the injured party, who was injured by his actions. And it has to be redressable. That means the government has to have the ability to remedy the problem. Well, the problem is the injury. That's the problem. But we've gone so far away from that. So I'm just going to read the statute that he was actually charged with. I don't know if anybody's read this yet, but this is U.S. Code 18, laundering money of monetary instruments, 1956. The concealment or disguise. So he was charged with B and C, parts B and C. It says, whoever with intent. So the key is the with intent part. To conceal or disguise the nature, location, source, ownership, or control of property, believed to be the proceeds of specified unlawful activity. And the second part is to avoid a transaction reporting requirement under the state or federal law. It's interesting that they say unlawful, they don't say illegal. So the statute is based on some unlawful activity. It doesn't say it's based on some illegal activity. And there's a difference there, and that is unlawful implies, some kind of immoral or unethical activity. Something can be unlawful even though there's no statute. The definition of common law is that it's something that's not established by legislation or by any kind of legislative body. It's common to the people. It could be a tradition. For example, was there a requirement to create a law that says murder is wrong? No. Murder was always been wrong. The first time everyone, there was a murder, they didn't go say, well, there's no statute, it's okay. They said, no, it's wrong, there was injured party, and, they brought the person to the trial. And so that's the basis of the common law. It's based on real injury. And lawful and legal differ in that lawful contemplates the substance of law, its content, whereas legal leads to the form of law, its form or appearance. The adjective, the lawful adjective has four senses. One, it has to be comfortable to or allowed by law, according to custom or rule, or natural law. So, and three, authorized, sanctioned by, or in accordance with law. So it doesn't have to be written in the statute for it to be unlawful. And so I thought it was interesting, she could have maybe argued something on that, like, hey, well, maybe drugs are illegal, but are they really unlawful? I don't know if that's ever been argued or not. Right. Oh yeah, jury instruction. Okay. Well, I want to read this article, Sixth Amendment of the Constitution, because this kind of, the question is if you're being prosecuted as a criminal, what really rights do you have, and do you have a rights to common law? And I think you do have rights to common law. If you do have a rights to common law, then you have a right to who accused you, and what was the injury, and how can then you can get into that whole cause-effect relationship between your actions and who was harmed. And so the article, Amendment 6 says this. It says, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with a witness against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining a witness in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. So the key word in there, you have the right to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation. What do they mean by the cause? Well, the cause, that's a term used in common law, which is the cause of action, and that's the link to the injured party. Cause of action means you commit an action, show the cause that resulted in your loss of your rights. If I perform an action and that affects somebody else and that takes away their right, if I commit if I rob a person's house, if I kill someone, that's an act that causes injury of someone else losing their rights. That's the cause of that's the nature and cause. That's the cause of the action that I did, and you have a right to know that and to show that So that's, I think, where the injured party comes into play. It's a little weak, I will say, but certainly it's not practice in our current court system. But, I guess we're looking for ways to get to the source of this and be able to argue in court to return back to basic, common sense of, the non-aggression principle, basically. And I think that's grounded and founded in, the original English common law that we've sort of meandered and wandered away from, entered into this legal fictional world. So the legal definition of cause of action. 1, the grounds as violation of a right, in parentheses, the grounds as a violation of a right that entitle a plaintiff to bring a suit, an amended pleading, reiterating a cause of action for loss of profits. So it's a violation of a right. 2, the court led by Congress intended to cause of action. And so anyway, the other thing is that corpus delicti is the body of evidence, the essence of a crime. So that's a term that's been used. Corpus means body, delicti, evidence. So there has to actually really be a crime when you. In other words, it can't be a hypothetical crime. It has to be a real, legitimate crime. And so basically, what's the bottom line is, I don't know how much time I'm supposed to be taking or not. 5 more minutes? Okay. Okay. So basically, the bottom line is, really I think comes down to jury nullification. I think that's the crux of this whole thing is, we need more people out there engaging in nullification. And where, everyone's probably heard of jury nullification, and where does that come from? Is it a real thing? And I think the nullification is a direct result of the common law history of our common law court system. And so far, as of today, we still have juries, and we still have the ability to nullify, even though what I'm about to read disagrees with that. There are many Supreme Court cases and rulings that we still have a right to nullify, and we still have a right to show up for jury trial, to be on a jury. But we're this close to taking all that away. Right now, basically, the jury is essentially a rubber stamp, And so when I read these jury's instructions, these are jury instructions straight out of Thomas's case that the judge gave to the jury. And to me, this is an act of war. That's how I take it. Because really it comes down to who's the sovereign? Are the people sovereign or is the government sovereign? Well, when you assemble a jury, the jury represents the sovereign of the community. And that really gets into where is the source of law? Where does law originate? The law originates from the sovereign. So if you're a king and you're the sovereign, then you create the law. Whatever comes out of your mouth is law. And so you establish the law, but in our system, we've established that the people are sovereign. The government is not the sovereign. We've granted certain powers to the government for certain sovereignty. Like the government can issue a statement of war against another country. We've enumerated and granted that power to the government, but the people are still sovereign. They still have their sovereign intact. Their sovereign powers intact in the form of a jury. So on the jury, the law really originates from the jury. They establish the law by their verdict. And but the judges, and the attorneys, they have a different opinion on that. And basically, so I'll go reading this. I'll read these instructions so you understand. It says, this is instruction 3.1, duties of jury to find facts and follow law. Members of the jury, now that you have heard all the evidence, it is my duty to instruct you on the law that applies to this case. A copy of these instructions will be available in the jury room for you to consult. It is your duty to weigh and to evaluate all the evidence received in the case and, in that process, to decide the facts. So the jury only allowed to decide the facts. It is also your duty to apply the law as I give it to you in the facts, as you find them. So whether you agree with the law or not. So we're going to give you the law. All you decide is guilt or innocence. You must decide the case solely on the evidence and not the law. Do not allow personal likes or dislikes, sympathy, prejudice, fear, or public opinion to influence you. You should also not be influenced by any person's race, color, economic circumstance, or position in life. You will recall that you took an oath, blah, blah, blah. So the point is that they will establish the judge will establish the law, not the jury. That's what they tell the jury in the jury instructions. Even though we know that the jury actually can nullify and essentially change bad law. That's the point. And there's another jury instruction that was interesting. This is also interesting. It says, jury consideration of punishment. The punishment provided by law for this crime is for the court to decide. You may not consider punishment in deciding whether the government has provided its case against the defendant beyond a reasonable doubt. So basically, if they come to you and they say, hey, we created the statute that says if you spit on the sidewalk, it's 100 years in prison. You as a juror are not allowed to question that law. You're simply going to say, well, yeah, he did spit, so he does 100 years. So this is very specific. These instructions put a lot of power into the power of the government. I don't know how they got these instructions in there or what authority they were allowed them to put these. They're essentially lying to the jury, and they're influencing the jury. It's jury tampering. It's a crime if any of us did it. This is the crux of the situation. I think if it weren't for this, we wouldn't be in this situation. And so I don't know how to go about changing this. But I think, that's kind of where the crux is. And I think, jury nullification, the movement, is probably the biggest impact that we can have on, because all laws, we could argue over who's elected, who's president, who's, writing the statutes. But if we just go in the jury and say, throw them all out because they're all bogus, then who cares who really runs for elected office? This is where the rubber meets the road is the jury. The jury has ultimate arbitration to overrule all laws and statutes, and I believe it's a moral duty. I would believe that, but according to these instructions, they tell you the opposite. You don't have a moral duty. In fact, they say to not use your sympathy. They specifically tell you not to sympathize with the person. Take your sympathy out of the equation. All we want is we want a rubber stamp. That's all we want. And that's how they arrived basically at civil law, where we're now ruled by statute rather than being ruled by our peers in a court of our peers under common law. So, any more questions? Wow. Right, exactly. Thank you.
We've been covering this for, it was April 20th, so it's almost a year. It was on Marijuana Day, April 20th, they arrested him. It was all party. And they thought all the agencies went in, they thought they were going to get some. We got the big drug cartel, we're going to add nothing. They went through all this stuff that Michael Schoen put up and made sure, and kind of it was just, they made it up. It was a narrative. They needed Russians, they needed heroin, they needed. Thomas and I, and all of us, we've known Thomas for a long time. I was pretty sure this was coming because he's open, he's out on Craigslist. I trade Bitcoin, do it, I don't care about, don't care, and I don't like paperwork. Now, the one thing of anything that came out of this is this trial for the rest of the country. There's a gentleman named Theo Chino that was in civil litigation against the state of New York for doing a bit license, trying to require all this, because this is what this is really all about. When the financial collapse started in 7, 8, 9, around then, that's when Bitcoin started. Right at that time, we were pushing the use of silver. Silver calculator apps, you can go to festivals, know what the spot price is, do trade boom. Oh, the man don't dig it, okay? As that was going on, here comes Bitcoin. Well, the promise was anonymity, it was speed, it was no censorship, and these promises kind of get a little flaky as you get drilled down into it, but alternative currencies, cryptocurrencies, have been offering this. There has been a great advancement, and the man don't dig it. So what do? Here comes the BRICS. It's the Russians, the Chinese. Well, the BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, okay? But that doesn't matter. They're just negotiating for a big leather chair at the big mahogany table of we rule everybody anyway. So even if they got their own thing, we went and covered. From my perspective, I do 15 hours of radio a week. I mean, I am interviewing I get it. And we have Freedom's Phoenix, a webpage that Michael was mentioning, thank you, that we put all this stuff on. It's a perspective. Let me tell you what the perspective is. Exactly what Tom has put up, made clear, is that there is civil action, somebody's damaged. You have Budweiser versus Miller, and the government, we're impartial and great and wonderful and we bestow upon, and everybody has their rights, until they are one of the parties in interest. So when you're going up against the government, you're going up against the prosecutor, the judge, and the entire system. Now, what happened was, fully informed jury association, amendment, whatever, I'm just going to give you a little history on that and how it applies here in Arizona and what's going forward. My involvement in this whole thing, I knew from the beginning. I went to jury selection, and it goes like this. Does anybody in this country, imagine there was, 68, I think, jurors sitting here. They're going to get down to, 15 or 16 or so. They go and he says, anybody have a predisposition to that, had, a close family member that has experience with the criminal justice system and got screwed? And some people go, yeah, I did. Sons of bitches did this, said that, and kind of, and screw them. I hate all the cops. Cops lie. And you're gone, okay? So then now, Brown, well, do you think you could set aside your personal experience of being boned by the man to be able to adjudicate? Probably not, okay? Yeah, you're gone. So then they had, all right, does anybody use encryption? Anybody got Signal, Telegraph? Have you ever used PGP? Have you had encrypted emails? Do you have to? Well, of course you have if you've done any banking or online with you, but you don't know that. Did you make a conscious decision to try be secret with your texts? Got something to hide? Boom, you're off, okay? Anybody know anything about Bitcoin? One guy, yeah, man, we talk Bitcoin all the time. My friends, we Bitcoin, mining Bitcoin, got Bitcoin. Woo, we got it all, man. It's just my case, man. Bring it on. Can you set aside what you think you know about Bitcoin, put it over here, and take the opinion of the experts that the government has going up? And he goes, probably not. So, and you're gone. So they get rid of anybody that has any inclination for anything. They might as well just said, first off, we can start off, who gets taxpayer-funded paycheck? All right, well, then you guys go on this side. How many of you love the government? Okay, we got to whittle it down. Voir dire, it's called voir dire, which is Latin or French or whatever for jury stacking, okay? So you're not getting your peers. So this is what happens. There was an attorney that was in there, And the judge goes, well, you're not going to, should you be selected to be a juror, now you're not going to go in the jury room and elaborate on what I've been talking about here, right? Wink, wink, bar associated, kind of, we'll kick your ass, Mr. Attorney, you understand. I'm not sure the attorney got it. He's like, what the hell is going on? I got it. He didn't want to tell him about jury nullification. So I go, oh, man. And I go like this, federal marshal, you're not allowed to express any opinion in your hearing. I'm like, whoa, it's that bad? Yes, it is. Let me tell you some history. In the mid-1990s, I was Maricopa County chairman of the Libertarian Party. We run a lot of candidates. We do a lot of stuff. There's some candidates coming up now I'll tell you about. But this is what happened. We were making a big deal out of fully informed jury because Rick Tompkins, that was the state chair of the Libertarian Party, was also the national spokesperson for FIJA.org out of Montana with Dodge. They used to run this. He finally went to Costa Rica and said, screw this. Now, what happened was he and his wife published the international, certainly national, FIJA newsletter. There was a newspaper every month that came out, all these kinds of stories. So Arizona became, oh, we're going to get it. Now, there's a guy named John Norton. A lot of you guys don't know the Phoenix 40. You might have heard back in the day, they, them, those. These are the guys that ran the state and Republican, Democrat, and top of the pyramid of we see all and it's ours. Well, what happened was John and another gentleman, Evan Scharf, that recently passed away, has a bunch of stuff named after him, Goldwater Institute. And kind of, these guys were big FIJA supporters. And I think it was Evan, when he was in New York back in, 60s, 70s, it was illegal to have a gun. Rapists going around fire escapes, going, killing, raping, murdering, whatever. Boom. He shoots him, killed him. He's going jail. You had a gun. Yeah, but I defended my life against this known serial gun. Don't care. Jury nullification got him off. They go, not guilty. Freaking be gone. So he comes and tells this story, big contributor to the Republican causes, big guy behind a lot. He goes to the legislature, testifies, and he went, damn, him? Senate passes it. Fully informed jury amendment is that the jury is told that they have this power. Well, it passed the Senate, and law enforcement freaked out. During the discussion, the guys in the House, we were right in the middle of all this. Had a newspaper were doing it, Citizens Taking Initiative, CTI was doing all this stuff, and this is what happened. The House saying, yeah, give it, oh, we'll sign it, comes here, we'll do it. And then when it did, they go, whoa, I lied. Hell no. I'm not, because they knew where their bread was buttered. So it didn't pass the House, but it was the first legislative body in the nation that this had passed in Arizona. The controversy with the Libertarian candidates up talking about this all the time. We had a newspaper box in front of the federal building downtown on 1st and Van Buren, and it had FIJA flyers in it. Judges would go, do not look at or read the orange flyer out of the boxes out front. So we printed them on rainbow colors. I didn't like it. So they built a new federal building that goes to jurisdiction all the way to the street because the sidewalk belonged to the city, and our newspaper box, we wouldn't move it. They got the Republic. They got the Beat. They got the Smut magazine of the this and the that. Everybody else to go, and I go, I ain't going. Federal marshals want to call me down, explain it to me. I say the First Amendment out there is protecting this building. They're bombing federal buildings. This is right during Oklahoma City and all that. I go, I'm protecting you. I'm putting the First Amendment out here to shield you against the Second. I will not risk the employees here of the federal government by you taking away the First Amendment, leaving the Second. Blah, blah, blah. Damn it, I hate those libertarians. And that thing stood there for years until they built the new federal building. Because that federal building, they took the jurisdiction of the sidewalk, and then all of a sudden that newspaper box just disappeared. Really? We know the power of FIJA. Now, what we got them to do is the Attorney General and the Supreme Court here in Arizona issued a statement, and it went like this. Although we recognize the power of the jury to nullify the law, we have absolutely no obligation as the government to tell them they have that power. That's why you see this stuff. You will apply the evidence. Did a convict in jail scumbag do or not do this thing? Yeah, 20 years. That's what the law says. And you don't get to decide whether the law is unjust, misapplied, sucks, let the slaves go. Who cares about alcohol prohibition? I mean, there's tons of this stuff. They are so afraid of this. So, while this is going on, in the beginning, I could see what was going on. Anybody that knew anything about anything is just, yeah, and I'll take and kind of guilty. And what they needed was an excuse, an understanding, a reason, a show. Well, this attorney was not that. You know, that's a Mark Victor thing. You know, that's why I go, man, we're going to get some. He got baby Gabriel mom. You have, body, I stuffed the blue body, the baby into the bag and killed that, not guilty. Why? Because he made sure that they understood their job and they misapplied the law and da-da-da-da-da-da. It's all what you get the jury to do what they think is just and right if you can frame it right. And FIJA is not allowed. Entrapment, they made from the beginning. Anybody that thinks entrapment cases, they get you to kind of do something, that's not what this is. It's not going to be an argument. And anybody that has a thing against the government doing sting operations, and you're dismissed too. They got down to, it was down to, man, ooh, it was a guilty before you got started. FIJA. So this is what happens. A guy named Robert Anthony Peters is the vice president of Fully Informed Jury Association.org. He lives in Tucson. This Monday night, they're doing it at Arizona Beer Hall of whatever down at U of A. They're doing an event, free beer. Hey, anybody wants some free beer? They're going down to Tucson this Monday. You go in Freeman's Phoenix and you'll see it. An event that is about FIJA with FEE, Foundation for Economic Education. Now, these two groups can't endorse, a particular person or candidate or that kind of stuff, but they're big information, 5-0, whatever the heck. So, Wednesday, FEE is going to be doing another presentation. Fully Informed Jury is of interest enough to us that we came up with an idea. And I've showed some of you this. We have a box that has a Wi-Fi transmitter, router, with files that you can put in and a battery pack. And if you add a little solar thing to it, go forever. But you take this and you put it in the parking garage at the federal building. You're downtown. You're going anywhere. And what does it say? What everybody does. They come in with their phone. They go Wi-Fi. What are they? Oh, jury info. All right. There it is. The man is not going to dig that at all. Jury tampering. What the hell do you think they're doing? We're educating them on a power they already have, jury tampering. You're not allowed to tell them. Why? These questions we already went through 20-something years ago. I know what happened. I know what the government did. I know what the people understood. I know how it went. Why is it always Arizona? Because we educate them. I was going through or cleaning out a room in our barn, and I saved all the stuff from our workshop and everything. I came across cases of those flyers that we used to put in the FIJA boxes. Now, we can do new ones, but these were, so I gave them to, a friend that had a case going up in Denver. I might as well take these. We got some. I call Ed Vallejo when he got kicked out of the jury selection, and I go, hey, man, you want to put some flyers out in the parking garage? This needs to be a much larger campaign. The Libertarians, we now have, they're collecting signatures now for Libertarian candidates. Barry Hess, governor. Michael Kilsky for Attorney General. Now, Michael Kilsky has a master's in computer science. He's an uber geek and an attorney. And he was state chair of the Libertarian Party for a long time. And he's applied for judgeships and this and that and whatever. Running for AG. You have another guy, Mark, what's his name, running for U.S. Senate. Now, they wanted me to do Secretary of State, and I just wasn't feeling it. Because I negotiated the deal with the Democrat guys and kind of money. And so they believe that it's going to give the Democratic candidates, a couple more percent or something if there's a Libertarian on the ballot. Whether they're right or wrong, I don't care. Give us the money, and we'll go get them on, and we'll find out. Okay? So that's what's going on. So the Libertarians will be on the ballot. So talking to FIJA, talking to FEE, talking to the discussion group on the 18th of April, stuff, What we're going to do is we're bringing them in to use the Attorney General's run. Michael Kilsey has agreed to it to promote FIJA. So by the end of this campaign, by November, by the time I guess every freaking buddy in this state is going to have, just a moment, will have heard about fully informed jury. Michael understands this. He's willing to take the risk because the bar and the judicial system will get you one way or another. Now, fortunately, he's a bearded Jewish attorney guy, so maybe he can hide behind that, okay? But the thing is, he understands FIJA. He understands the power. He understands they don't like it. He understands. So then it's going to be up to us, me, whoever wants to do it, to make sure we take advantage of this. Once he is certified on the ballot, then we're going to go, it's going to be a FIJA thing. We're going to have us some fun and all of this great stuff that I guarantee that Keith should have heard, and he's late. So, I'm sorry, you wanted to make comments, sir? Speak up, I can hardly hear you. Well, that's nonpartisan races. The city of Phoenix does that, and others, and I don't care. And matter of fact, I had 44 election laws challenged at the Ninth Circuit, oral argument. I'm standing before a panel of judges, and I got an argument. And they don't care. It's a right of association that you can have, can I or can I not have a club. But then you get special rights and privileges if you belong to certain clubs. And if I got registered this way, I get the voter database at this amount or free. And if I'm an independent running, you got to pay 10 cents a name, $250,000 advantage. I've been through this. And I'm telling you, what would be better or not, it doesn't matter. What you're seeing is what Tom has pointed out is the deck is stacked intentionally for what? Support of the individual and our rights, or for support of the government? It is the government. What is that thing? Who is that thing? What is that? I can tell you what their interests are. It comes way back to the money and cryptography. This thing is big. Crypto is going to be, this is how it goes. To me, well, what do they say and what do they do about it? I'm going, it doesn't matter. If I got to care what a lawyer, a legislator, a politician, a governor, a president has to say about crypto or how I use my money or pirate communication, hailing frequencies invisible to the crown, they don't know, none of their business. If I have to go to them to ask permission or see what their opinion is, it's the wrong tech. It's the wrong way of doing it. I don't want to have to worry about that. That's the whole point, and that's what they're freaked out about. It's called FUDDing, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And they need to do everything they can with people like Thomas, but he has demonstrated no fear. And I know from the beginning, I thought I was doing him the best by not talking to him, not being part, not getting called, not nothing, other than saying this very publicly. Thomas will make them say it. And what Terry has pointed out is they got this whole thing and Russian drug money, but they didn't get the one thing that they really wanted. When you're trading crypto, they kept saying it's perfectly legal. Bitcoin is free, legal. It's not illegal. It's not illegal. It's not illegal. Does he have a filing requirement of paperwork? No. That's what they wanted. Now, this is what's going on right now. Doug Hodges from Westside Bitcoins, now known as Phoenix Crypto, he goes, yep, here they come. Yeah, I need some. Yeah, I'm doing some international gambling online kind of next. Va con Dios, man. Go God. Kind of. I already see where this is going. You need to be doing. Don't tell me what you're. I don't care. Why? Oh, you see. Well, nice to meet you, officer. Click. Take a picture. Peace. That's another thing. Theo Chino, the guy from New York, he was going out. He took pictures out on the sidewalk. Now, I don't know if he's on the federal sidewalk. This might have something to do with it, But he takes a picture of the informant. The agent. Yeah, click, click. Oh, I was in the restaurant. Click, 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 click. Now the agent tries, you take a picture. God, so freaking you jumped out in the doctor car. And he goes, yes, I did. And This is the battle that we're in. So where do I put my effort? If I really want to help Thomas, if I really want to afford what he wanted to accomplish, if I really, there's appeal, and there's things that'll happen. But I tell you, it's one thing, and I already know the result because we did this before. You remember back in the day, in the 90s. The jury, everyone, I mean trash can flyers, campaigns, commercials, billboards, signs, feed ya. If the people realize that they can just say not guilty just as a sense of justice, they'll feel better about themselves. They'll stop crying after sentencing. I didn't know. They wouldn't tell me what the penalty was. I had no idea that they were going to blah, 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 blah. We start taking this back as just an opinion. How it manifests itself in the court, it's just the man is going to freak just by the fact that we're even talking about it. I know this. They already have. And what did they do? They had to come out and say, yes, they have the power, but we have no obligation to tell them about it. Thank you. And we got it in writing. So that's what the future, in my opinion, is how we can best serve and what we learn from this. But Thomas is sitting in jail. So I appreciate having you. I took a picture of this on my phone. You got this. Send him a little something. I didn't want to communicate with him before, but now we can. Send him goodies, what you can put in his account. You know, make nice decks of cards, books, and stuff, and he's becoming a better person himself, and he's taken this awesomely. But I just, not all of us would. And not all of us would have gone through when they said, here's the deal. Make it a misdemeanor. You get like 30-something months. You already got so much stir. You get a couple more years. Oh, and we keep the Bitcoin in peace, and you can go. No. I want you to say it. Fine. 20, 30 years made us say it. That's who Thomas is. If and when he ever gets out, it's going to be a party. Now, what we did is we did a series of different projects, and one of them was Terry being able to purchase all these court documents to put it up for other cases. There are many other cases like this, lots of entrapment, lots of stuff, and people where they're going, in and willing to fight it until they know what all this stuff, what the tactics they were doing, where they were willing to go, and how they did it, and what they did get and didn't get, and all. Until then, they can't make a decision. Well, because of what Terry's done, that's the first place they go is downloading all this stuff because it's happening everywhere. So now they know. And this documentation, they don't like that either. Well, it costs money. So we put up a Bitcoin Cash and Bitcoin alternative current whatever donations for him to do it, and I'm glad to see that you got some take care of that. But there's other projects that we do too. That's what the crypto community is about. And those of you in crypto, you need to find out and give a freaking dollar or something because out of principle so you don't go to HE double hockey sticks in your mind of you didn't help, you scumbag. Did I say that out loud? Anyway. But anyway, so whatever incentive, for just a couple, and because you can be private with it, the way that you do it, better start learning how too. So, silver lining is we have a firsthand, and a lot of us that were there and saw it happen, understanding of the power and the fear they have of jury nullification. Just a sense of justice. And it's exactly how Tom put. It deviated from what the real point of the government was to defend in the Declaration of Independence, when the governments are instituted among men to protect individual rights. When it ceases to do that, it's time to alter or abolish. Well, this is what we're talking about. We can at least do it an altering back to what the original intent was. We're going to be on the right side. We're going to be the good guys. We're going to be information, and we're going to have some fun. Because if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. And I know the motivation is bad and it's a dark cloud, but there has to be some pushback on these guys. And we do it in a big way. Feed you.
I'd just like to make an observation. One of the important things in this struggle is the courage to not do a plea deal. In fact, there's a movement, don't take the plea deal, okay? And what a story I heard from New Hampshire was that there was a guy who was busted for drugs, and he didn't take the plea deal. So the undercover officer had to show up in court to testify. So everybody could see him, okay? And the activists took pictures of him, okay? Now, not in the court, but coming and going, okay? And sure enough, later on, that same undercover guy was busting somebody, just about to bust somebody else, and another activist said, hey, don't do business with that guy, he's a narc. So it shuts him down. It shuts him down.
What agency is behind this prosecution? Because like with the Bundys, the BLM, everything the BLM, all those laws are null and void because they didn't come out of Congress. They came out of the BLM. These agencies make these laws up, and
Does this work? There were a number of agencies involved. Started with IRS, ended with DEA, Scottsdale Police Department, liaison between DEA and Scottsdale. So there were a number of agencies involved. Federal Prosecutor's Office took all the data and prosecuted. So that's where it went. But the key was the jury did have the ability to say not guilty based on the dirty dealing done by the government. How much money do we think the government should spend on an undercover operation? I'd like to find out how much they did spend.
You know, it's interesting, in the evidence, they're going, one of the guys, he goes, yes, and I followed him, and he got out of his house, and he got on his bicycle, and he rode his bike to public transportation, and on public transportation, now there was an officer that got on, so Thomas put down his sunglasses. And then when he got off the train, he put his sunglasses up. And I'm like, what do we get out of this? One, he doesn't like government. He rides a bicycle. I mean, it wasn't a Lamborghini, okay? Who are we going after here?
Yeah, let's spend $500,000 to catch a guy like this. You know, it's ridiculous. But I will be interested to see if there's an appeal and what the appeal consists of. So if I could get a little more money in, I'll buy those documents, $3,600, and see if I can get the price down some. My ear's plugged up for some reason, so I'm not hearing myself.
If you do a request for funding and show how much you've gotten, how much it cost, it'll, I just need this much.
I'll put it on the screen.
We'll put it up on, we'll put it up on the site.
Yeah, I'll put it on the site so people can see it. So far it's the one Bitcoin donation. And, I'm going to leave it in Bitcoin, try to get the money from another place and leave that there. Excuse me? Yeah. I don't think this has the volume up. Use that one. Anybody have any other questions? Is that working? Is it okay? Okay. If there's any other questions, we can take some now. If not, we can go through some other things. But if you'll read some of those documents, I think you'll learn a lot. The point is what happens in the jury room. That's the key. All it would have taken is one to say, well, I don't like what the government did. I want to say not guilty, and that could have thrown the whole thing out. So we didn't have that person. I watched the movie Runaway Jury. It's pretty good. It's an old movie. But that's the idea. You can stack the jury, and they showed how they do it. And all we have to do is read the voir dire, and you'll see what the questions were. I think that'll be an important document to get. We had the choice of buying the documents without it. I don't see why we do without it. That's probably one of the most important parts of the trial. So, yes. Okay. You might adjust the volume back there.
Yeah. I just remembered something else that I heard, and I don't remember what community this was, but it was a small town, and the state was trying to get somebody for one of these victimless crimes, and they had the jury pool, and they said, can you honestly give a fair and impartial verdict? And there were so many people who didn't like what the government was doing. They said, well, do you have a problem with that? And they raised their hand, and they had like 4 people left. They couldn't have a trial. If FIJA really gets going, I mean, there's 2 ways to handle this. One is to go stealth, right? Oh, yes, I can do, bow down and yes, sir, Mr. Judge, sir, And then when you get in the jury room, say, not guilty. You don't have to explain yourself. Not guilty. Okay? That's step number 1. But if FIJA really gets going and we really make an impact and the government keeps doing what it's doing and making more and more and more enemies, pretty soon we'll have a situation where you'll have a jury room and they'll be doing the voir dire and everybody will go, yeah, the government sucks. I cannot be in, I'm going to, if I get in that jury box, I'm going to say not guilty. And they'll clear the room out and they won't have any more jurors. Won't that be a great state of affairs? And there's one other point I want to make. There's a guy in Texas who's been working another angle, the grand jury. There's a whole nother area to work this. Grand juries have incredible powers to indict politicians. Yeah, the prosecutors know the power. You were right about the petty jury. FIJA scares the crap out of them. But the petty jury only has the jurisdiction in one case. The grand jury can do their own investigation. Okay, they can look into stuff on their own and bring down indictments. Okay, this can be a long project.
Address that. When we were doing the FIJA thing in the mid-90s, one of the initiatives was called the Citizens Grand Jury. Where this came from, we found out about in Oklahoma at the time. I don't know if it's true now or not, but at the time, I think it was only 5,000 signatures. There was no more than 10,000. For 5,000 signatures, the people called a grand jury, and they would investigate. Well, what happened, there was a university where one of the coaches, there was a requirement by the university that you had to buy certain athletic equipment, and he owned the company, okay? So the people, they were paying outrageous amounts, $20 shirts, that kind of crap. So the kids go, oh, hell no, we got enough eligible voters here in this town and around, and they raised the signatures, put it to a grand jury. They went, oh, hell no, we don't like that one bit. When we saw that you could do that, we did one of the initiatives that we did in '94 was called the Citizens Grand Jury. By getting it on the ballot, the people would be able to collect signatures that they would empower a grand jury that would then be able to investigate corrupt politicians, doing all kinds of stuff. Oh, the man did not care. That effort, along with FIJA, was one of the reasons to try and bring the steam valve down for them to create that letter about, yeah, you had the power, but we don't have to tell them. This was, so I don't have a problem. I got the verbiage for it. It's ready. Now, do you do it as a political campaign? Do you do it as an initiative? Now, this is another thing. I just did it last night. You can go on right now, and the link will be up on Freedom's Phoenix. By Monday, we're going to start making a big deal of it on Monday. You can go, and they want your driver's license number. Now, that equates, might as well be your social security number and whatever the hell, but they want your driver's license number, as if somebody doesn't have a bunch of driver's license. There's a bunch of dead driver's license number people, I'm sure, that are doing whatever the hell they want. But at the Secretary of State's office, you put in your driver's license number, your name, your address, boom. It sees your registration. They know what you're registered as. They know whose petitions you can sign or the initiatives. Starting this year, right now, I signed all the Libertarian candidates, their petitions to be on the ballot online in about 5 minutes. And when you do initiatives and you make a big deal out of this stuff, for the first time, now you can sign the petition for this initiative online. They don't know what's coming.
So there are a lot of things coming and a lot of things we can do. I will get these documents as soon as possible and get them posted, and we'll wait for word on an appeal. The sentencing will be June 11th, It'll be at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's posted on the website. The judge put out the order, the date and time. So it would be good to have the room filled for sentencing. Just if you do go, you got to pay close attention. You don't show any signs of anything. Just be respectful and be quiet. Otherwise, they'll throw you out. And it won't help Thomas to have that happen. So just being present is all we need to do. And anything else we have going on outside, you know, signs or anything else will be different. But what we do inside, we have to be careful. So, okay, June 11th at 4 p.m. That's a Monday, I think. I'm not sure. We've got a can right here. Don't have a hat today, but if you could put some extra money in the can, pass it around. We're probably short at least $1 or $2 per person for the meals today, so and use of the room. But we'll see what the prices are going to, after today, we'll kind of evaluate what we're doing. We didn't have enough food for the way we're really going to do it, so we're going to have to order 3 batches of food if you want something besides the eggs and everything. So, yeah. Sure. There's another microphone. Yes, we did.
Okay, this was interesting. We're standing outside the federal courtroom where they're bringing in the jurors. We just walk in, and I sit down. Thomas is there. I sit down in the first pew, and all of a sudden, 2 federal marshals jump me. Who are you with? What are you doing? I'm going, and I'm hesitating because I'm like, screw you. What do you care? What, I'm not supposed, what? And he goes, well, we need to know who you are. I'm going, why? Well, we got to make room for the juror. Oh, okay. No, I am not a juror. Would you step outside? We need room for the jurors. We go out, and they told us, nope, jury selection today, you're not allowed to come in. You're not allowed to be here because we need the room for. Well, somebody, it was you or somebody came, no, it was Michael Basic. Mike Basic came up, and he goes, there's a Supreme Court decision right here that was just decided in 2010 that you cannot close jury selection to the public. That has to be open to the public also. So every time somebody would come in, we wouldn't tell them that we weren't supposed to be in. And we go, hey, what are you guys doing? Oh, we're just hanging out, go on in. Boom, kick them out. Boom, kick them out. Boom, kick them out. Renee goes in, and we said, here, show them this. And we give them on the phone the case, and they go, hey, well, what about, and kind of like, damn it, I hate these freaking libertarians, man. So then they go, all right, after everybody's been seated, and we have them on the floor and on the walls and whatever we do, you know, we'll see we got room. So we all got to go in for jury selection. But they didn't want us to, and they tried to make it out that we couldn't.
It was quite interesting. No, I don't know offhand right now.
2010 Supreme Court public access jury ruling.
U.S. Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court. Correct. Okay. Next month, we have this room reserved for this month, the month of May, month of June. We're taking July and August off. We have this room reserved for September, October, November, December. So that's when we'll have the Breakfast Club. It'll be, get here about 8, a little after 8. They'll put the food out about 8:15. You can start eating. We'll start the speaker about 9 and go to 11. And then we should be out of here before noon. So talk afterward, whatever, but try to vacate the room so they can clean it up.
Yeah, it's been $10 for 20, 30 years, man. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I think here, we just couldn't even
It's got to go to 15. I'll tell you what I did. I set up a special checking account for the Breakfast Club. They want us to pay with a debit card. I have a debit card that says Arizona Breakfast Club on it. I put $1,000 in that account. I took $200 out for cash, which is in the cash box. Whatever you people paid is in there. We'll leave $200 in the box. The rest of it goes in the bank. I don't want to see the account slowly coming down. It's got to go up till I get my $1,000 back, please. So I'd like to get some donations. by the end of the year, we'll decide that should we ever stop, and we can decide where it's going to go. So, yeah, well, right now, anything that comes in for documents, if I can get more than I need, will go to Thomas. Now, I'm going to try to leave that Bitcoin alone because I got a feeling that Bitcoin will be worth a lot more eventually and probably cover the costs of these documents. So it's a lot to look forward to, but it's going to be an interesting year, to say the least. Anybody have any other comments or anything? Yes. Don't know, but I'd suggest just start using Bitcoin since no paperwork requirements exist until they decide to try to change it. Yes? Right. Sure, I'm sure they would. I just wanted to have the bookkeeping all so it was easy. That's all. Yeah. Well, we'll see. Right now, we're just going to get things organized and see what happens. Any question?
I'm sad that I couldn't make the trial, and I feel for all of you. I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who did go, and everyone who helped legally and financially and everything else.
And the best thing you could do is read the documents and see what you missed. And we'll try to get those transcripts.
People should understand, this is international. There's been a lot of attention, and what Terry has accomplished by keeping this up is being downloaded everywhere.
Quiet, please, quiet.
Okay. So we'll kind of end the meeting. We can have a few comments. You want to say anything, anybody? Or? Okay, we'll end the meeting here. You can sit around and talk a little bit and get things together. Thank you. Thank you all for coming.